Welcome back to this week's Colombia Business News Recap. It's at least in Antioquia, at least near Medellin, it's a rainy weekend, which is a good thing because Colombia is suffering overall critical water supply levels. There has already been water rationing in Bogota, for example, in Medellin, in the eastern suburbs of Medellin and other areas around the country. The dams are, some of the water supply and hydroelectric dams are down under 30% of capacity. If they get down much below 27% or so, then we may also see electrical rationing as well as they may have to restrict the flow in the turbines to keep the lakes from running dry. So this is a rainy weekend, but that's a wonderful thing. I cannot remember in recent memory being so glad to see a rainy day, but that's what we have here in the outside of Medellin, let's say. This week, today we also see protest. Earlier in the week, a couple of things have happened. So Gustavo Petro has been pushing his constituent assembly idea, but he knows that he doesn't have support for it in the legislature nor in the court system, and he would need approval in both of those chambers or organs to get that to go through. He has kind of floated what a lot of political pundits would call trial balloons and tried to say, well, we'll have the streets do it or something like that. So I don't know what that means. Does that mean you're going to have a revolt or civil insurrection? A lot of people got their hackles up and were outraged when he said that, saying that he kind of wants is calling people to misbehave in some way. So anyway, aside from that, that was last Monday. Uh, he called this past week for a civil day, a day of civil action. Now, the president does not have direct control over people. It's not a dictatorship. He has control over those national government agencies in the executive branch. So those agencies that fall under the operation of the presidency. And he called for this day. He says this to conserve energy and to be mindful of electric usage um, and water usage. But his opposition pointed out that the day he chose also fell on the anniversary of. Now remember, Gustavo Petro is a former M19 guerrilla. The M19 movement was a left-wing nationalist group that wanted to overthrow the government. They invaded the Justice Department, the Colombia's, they call it Palacio de Justicia, which translates as the Justice Palace, which ended up getting burnt down. A lot of people died in that attack. Well, so they attacked it, and then the government, of course, sent in troops to, or police or whatever, to capture them, and that the fighting that ensued and the melee and the place caught on fire and everything led to a lot of deaths of innocent people, both government workers and people who just happened to be on their in the building on their own business that day. And Petro served some time in jail. He ended up getting amnesty or whatever. But the day of civil action was also the day that would be the commemoration of this M19 revolutionary group. And so a lot of people were saying he was trying to make a stealth holiday to support his old rebellion rather than an innocent day of civil observance. So there was a big kind of counter complaint from pretty much every other sector besides his own supporters to that. And today, in the municipal areas like Bogota, Medellin, Cartagena, I believe Cali, but the major cities in Colombia, there is an opposition protest. People are taking to the streets. I haven't been down there. It looks like But it looks like there's a big turnout of people. So obviously you're going to have your usual opposition, people like supporters of the Centro Democratico, but you're also going to have supporters of other political movements, and then people that are not aligned but don't like what they see going on with the current national administration. So that's what's happening here this weekend. But we also have, it's been an interesting week for news. Sacha Lemaire, or Lemaire, I'm sorry, I took French, I took 1 year of French in high school in the 1980s, and I've forgotten pretty much all of it. But a Canadian citizen, looks like he might be from Quebec, Sacha Lemaire Lepaige, who went by, it seems like, the nickname El Gringo, was captured this past week for a bunch of different things. But Colombia's Attorney General's office has announced that they announced this Friday that they've locked this guy up, Sacha Lemaire Lepaige, and he was caught with a firearm, which you cannot have in Colombia. Colombia has very strict, some would say draconian gun control laws. It's almost impossible to own a firearm legally in Colombia. You need to get a special dispensation from the government and show why, like um, maybe you operate a security firm, or you have been persecuted by criminals or something like that, or maybe some other situation you're in where you're a jeweler or something like that. But basically, there's no legal public ownership of firearms in Colombia. So they caught this Canadian guy out in Guatapé. Guatapé is the name actually has several different meanings. It's a small town, and a lot of people know El Pino, this big rock that they have out there. It's a big basolith, big granite and quartz geological structure that's a tourist attraction. And then there's a dam, a hydroelectric dam at the, so there's these two towns next to each other, Guatapé and El Pino, and there's a reservoir that is commonly called El Pino, and the electric company EPM has control of it, and there's a dam, and they generate electricity and things like that. But it's also become a very popular tourist attraction. It's lovely. If you get to Medellin, you want to get out there if you can. It's depending upon traffic, it's between 90 minutes and 2 hours outside of the city of Medellin. And so now there's all kind of vacation homes and things like that built up around it. But so this Canadian fellow uh, got a hold of some property out there and was inviting people down. According to news reports in La Semana magazine, which means the week, which is a weekly mag. It's kind of like the Time magazine of Colombia. And then also El Tiempo, they reported that neighbors turned this guy in because he would invite people down on this promotion called Come and Be a Narco for a Day, which I think is not only extremely poor taste. Well, it is extremely poor taste, but anyway, he was crying. He was one of these bro types um, who was having people come down, and he had all kind of exotic monkeys and a little thing. They call it a tigrillo. It's kind of like it's a South American version of a bobcat, maybe, but it's this wild animal. You can't have them. You can't have wild animals down here. People get in real big trouble because they go out in the woods and they try to come back with the sloth or something like that. There's a very serious illegal trade in wild animals like monkeys and cats and all kind of things. So this guy had all. So there's an organization called Cornare, which is kind of like a animal welfare agency. They're after this guy now because he's had all these wild animals. And then he was having these parties and he was having people come down there. So the neighbors called the police on this guy because people were coming down and shooting up the place. And you can't do that down here. Now, back in the States, I'm a pro-gun guy back in the States and lifelong. I was a firearm safety instructor back in the day. But when you are in a different country, you have to abide by the laws of that country. When you come down here, especially when you come down here voluntarily and you decide that you want to be down here, you need to follow the laws and the norms of the country that you have decided to to be a guest in or an immigrant in either case with the permission and the goodwill of the host country and the host people. So this guy's in big trouble, and there's this DJ who it looks like there's some people are saying that did the animals belong to this DJ, or did the animals belong to him? In any case, they found over a pound of cocaine on this guy's property. He had all these girls there, and there are also news reports, saying that he's linked with La Terraza. La Terraza, which translates to the terrace, is a criminal organization like a gang or a mafia that operates in Medellin and operates in the eastern region of Antioquia, like Rio Negro. And four of the people, there was some kind of party or whatever going on when the police raided the place. Four of the people that were there, besides him, he already has gotten into trouble in Colombia. There's a lawsuit involving him. There's some other criminal complaints involving this Sacha guy. But then some of the people at the event that he was having, this party, four of the 10 people that were in attendance, according to the police, or according to the attorney general, also had criminal records as well. So that's a serious case. We're going to see what happens with this case with this El Gringo who throws these Narco for a day parties. He's also in jail now. And it looks like he was caught red-handed with serious narcotics violations and firearm violations. And they're also investigating if there was any kind of sexual trafficking or whatever going on there. So that's a big story right now. Last week, the U.S. National Archive published a secret intelligence dossier from the Carter administration. So we're talking about going back like 40 years ago. And back in the 70s, I read a lot of it. I mean, there's a lot of information that came out. Obviously, I'll share the link to the information with you. But look in the notes here. But the documentation shows how narco trafficking was really just beginning to be a real serious problem. And what had happened was the Carter administration briefed Colombian President Alfonso Lopez Michelson. And at the time, the U.S., which has all this intelligence and things like that, so they gave Rosalind Carter, Jimmy Carter's wife, actually went and met the president. They didn't want, I don't want to go make stuff up, but generally, they won't send the president because then it becomes like a state visit and all this stuff like that, and people are like, oh, president's coming to see me. And if they don't want to, usually they will do that as some kind of reward, or if there's some really serious business to talk about. So Rosalind Carter met with President Lopez Michelson and presented a list of 36 corrupt Colombian officials, including Defense Minister General Abraham Varon Valencia, the Minister of Labor Oscar Montoya, and the presidential candidate later, who became the president, Julio Cesar Turbay, implicating all of them in being corrupt and with drug trafficking. George Washington University really goes in depth on these archives. There's way too much to unpack here. I'm not a specialist on that kind of thing, on either narcotics or diplomacy, but I read through a lot of it. It's fascinating. And for those of you that are into policy and foreign relations and or let's say drug policy, binational enforcement and things like that, this is your kind of stuff. It's really juicy. It's really good stuff. So I'll put the link to where you can dig deeper into that if you want to. Now, Pedro Jose Silva Ochoa and his henchmen drugged and kidnapped 2 U.S. soldiers back during the pandemic on March 5th, 2020. In Bogota. So the U.S. does not have military bases in Colombia, but there's it's like the second or third biggest embassy in the world, the U.S. embassy in Bogota. I've been there a few times. It's not a building. It's like a whole compound. It's a giant, it would take you probably 40 minutes if you wanted to walk around the whole facility. It's in the if you've ever been to Bogota, if you've been to Bogota, you probably know where it is already. But when you land at the airport and you're going to go into the city, you pass by it. It's on that main drag there, which is 26th Avenue or Avenida El Dorado, and there's this huge complex. It looks like a fort, actually. They probably don't like me saying that, but it does. It kind of looks like a fort, and you can see the buildings way up in there, and they've got all these like satellite antennas and crazy stuff up on the roof. I look up there sometimes and I'm like, I wonder which ones are the secret ones or whatever. But anyway, so these criminals, and there's been some cases about this. There was a case a few years ago when this DEA guy, and he wasn't working. I don't think. I don't know the tiny details of the case, but he was just like out on his own for dinner or whatever. And so there's a part of Bogota has a few different, I guess you would call them like nightlife areas or whatever. So there's Zona G, which is one of my favorites, and it's more of like a gastronomy. There's not really a lot of nightclubs there, but there's all kind of nice restaurants, and it's in the area called Chapinero, and you've got a few hotels. You've got a Four Seasons there. You've got all kind of nice restaurants and things like that there. And then you have another area called Zona T, Zona Thing, which is where the Andino shopping mall is. And you do have a bunch of nightclubs and things like that there. It's a short walk from Parque 93, Park 93, which is kind of an exclusive, um, how would you say, like a area with the highest concentration of foreigners. So if you say that if there's a neighborhood where most foreign people live, when I say foreign people, I mean like executives and diplomats and things like that, then it's going to be around these areas. And so anyway, so around Zona T, I like Zona G better myself. But if you're like a nightlife person, if you want to go to clubs and stuff like that, there's going to be that. There's also Gallerias, which is nice. Galleria has a lot more bars. Galleria's got like, I like it because it's regular people. You're out there. This is off of 53rd. It's also in Chapinero. It's off of 53rd Street. And it's got like just restaurants and bars full of like just regular Colombians on their after work or whatever. It doesn't have an international vibe. It's not exclusive. It's also not poor or super dangerous or anything like that either. So that's actually the area I like. But anyway, so there was a case where this DEA agent, they tried to rob him, and he, being a badass, I guess, fought back. And so they killed him. And so they didn't realize he was a DEA agent because they just were like, let's rob this guy. And turns out he was. And so they really screwed up because the federales, man, people in the U.S. know that it's one thing for city or state law enforcement to be after you, but it's a whole, as they say, a whole nother level, which is not really good grammar. But it's another level when the federal government is pissed off with you with their unlimited resources. Now, you can say they don't have unlimited resources. Well, practically speaking, they do. And they will make a point of getting you. And they will go anywhere in the world to get you. So, uh, so in that case, they ended up catching these criminals, taxi driver guys or whatever, and they extradited them to the U.S. But in this case, with so in 2020, there were these two army guys that were in Colombia. They were up on the north side. They went to go watch. They went to a sports bar, and in the sports bar they got drugged. Somehow somebody put something in their drinks. I saw that it was benzodiazepine actually in the Justice Department uh, report on this, and they caught one of the henchmen, Jefferson Arango Castellano, and shipped him off in a cage to the U.S. And so this other guy, Pedro Silva, goes on the run, and he goes to Chile, thinking that, all right, I'm going to get away. Well, the U.S. government found him in Chile, and of course, in coordination with the Chilean government, the Chilean authorities, which has pretty good relations with the United States. But they caught this guy, Mr. Pedro Jose Silva Ochoa, for kidnapping these two U.S. soldiers who were just out in Bogota trying to have a good time and watch some sports. But now Silva is in Miami on trial and facing justice. So I remember when I was a kid, and we would you see these patriotic bumper stickers or something like that, and they were mostly directed towards, I guess, the Soviet Union, or sometimes maybe Iran if it was like in the early 80s or something like that. I want to say don't mess with the U.S. Well, I'm not saying this to be super patriotic or anything like that. I mean, I am, but I mean the point is that these guys, I mean, don't do crimes, but then if you do and you involve U.S. government personnel somehow, then you've opened up a whole different level of hornet's nest. And there will be resources dedicated to I don't want to say revenge, retribution, or as they would say, bringing you to justice, way more than even normal. And so people need to not do crimes and be nice anyway. But that's a whole different level that these guys messed around and found out. So Ochoa's now in the he's in Miami, but he's not in Miami with the bling blineo or on Brickell or anything. Well, actually, I think the court I know there's a U.S. office right there. I used to work in an office on Brickell, and there was a U.S. I don't remember if it was FBI or one of the alphabet agencies, and I could see their office from my window, and it was unmarked, but it was obviously a federal office, and you saw these guys coming in and out in their suburbans and all that stuff like that. But anyway, so moving on, let's talk about some business. After all, this business news show, right? So WOM is bankrupt. WOM, which the branding says that it stands for word of mouth, but it's a cellular carrier, mobile wireless operator that was started in Colombia. There was also one started in Chile with the same name by British impresario Chris Bannister. And he started these two kind of competitive telephone companies. The one in Colombia ended up merging with Avantel, which was another sort of semi-startup competing carrier. So when they started up, you have your main carrier. So you've got Claro, which is owned by Telmex or America, what's it called, America Mobile or something like that. Carlos Slim's joint, so Mexican headquarters, but it's a huge multinational now. Then you have Movistar and you have Tigo. Tigo is owned by Millicom, and which is a European international concern. And Movistar is owned by Telefonica, even though I think they're trying to sell off their Latin American assets. But anyway, so those are your three main telephone companies in Colombia. There's also ATB, which is kind of owned by the city of Bogota. And but anyway, and you had like UNE in Colombia, which is really part of Tigo. And so basically the city still owns some share of that. The last mayor, Quintero, tried to sell it off and get his hands on that money, but they blocked him from doing that. And so then WOM and Avantel and these other carriers are kind of challengers to the incumbents. And so when they first started, they bought capacity off of the other carriers so that their customers could get cell service. But then they started to build out their own network of their own antennas and their own infrastructure and things like that. But it was sold off to Icelandic private equity firm Novator. And a couple years ago, I remember when Chris Bannister posted and said, "Okay, thank you, Colombia. I'm out of here." I think in Chile he actually came back to run the Chilean operation, according to him, with the promise that Novator was going to put more money into it to recapitalize it, but that didn't happen. So both of these operations are now in bankruptcy. Now remember, you've got what in the U.S. would be called Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is a liquidation. But then you have Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is reorganization. Now they're under reorganization, so they're trying to salvage their operations and renegotiate things with creditors and their obligations. And so the idea is that they continue operating as companies, not closing down. So people who are WOM customers, they have post-pay plans or plans where you get a normal invoice, but a lot of or at least when they first started, their big thing was prepaid. Their big thing was to get people to move to them. And they were you're walking down the street and there's these people bothering you. I say bothering you, but they're doing their job. But they're trying to get you to sign up for WOM, and you're walking somewhere, you're about to go in a store or something like that, and there's these WOM guys out there with their, I don't know, SIM cards or whatever they're handing. I used to be like, get away, get away. But anyway, we used to try to speak to Bannister when he was here, but we were never able to make that happen. I never got a response from him, but we wanted to interview him when WOM first started. Of course, I think that would have made all the difference, and that's why I think that they're in trouble is because they didn't talk to Finance Colombia. Of course, I'm being facetious, but anyway, so hopefully WOM is sick. Hopefully they get better. And moving on, Ruta-N, it was cool. I was there. It was good, always good to get back to Ruta-N. Ruta-N is a business incubator owned by the city of Medellin, and the idea is to help local entrepreneurs get off the ground, but also to help foreign companies that want to launch operations in Colombia. They have a place to, like, as a launch pad. And that might be large established companies. It might be smaller companies. There's kind of a tech focus. It's really focused on IT and software and innovation and that kind of thing, but not strictly so. I've seen some businesses that open there that have been in the medical sector, not like a clinic or anything like that, but maybe medical technology or accounting and finance and things like that. But there's a physical building, Ruta-N. It's on the north side of the city. It's kind of, sad. In Bogota, it's weird. So a lot of the cool stuff, pretty much almost all the cool stuff in Bogota is on the north side of the city, which is the higher income side of the city. And then in Medellin, it's sort of the reverse, in that the north side of the city is sort of the lower income part of the city. And then the southern side of the city is the higher income part of the city. But Ruta-N, it's been there now for more than 10 years, but it's on the north side of the city. It's near a couple different universities, and the idea is to inject vibrancy and investment into that part of the city. And it's done. It certainly has not been a failure. Ruta-N is really an impressive place. It really has brought a lot of investment and attention to the city of Medellin. And so now Thursday they announced a combined collaboration between Ruta-N and SAP, the German software company, a new initiative. And so Ruta-N's director, Carolina Londoño, announced with the SAP's regional president, Marcela Perilla, who's also Colombian, that this initiative is not like when HP was there, and HP kind of had a minor operations center. I say minor, it was supposed to be like 300 people, but it was a victim of the Mark Hurd scandal that a lot of you in IT will remember. But anyway, so SAP is coming in not to do any kind of internal operations, but to collaborate with Ruta-N and with those entrepreneurs and startups and other businesses that might have kind of an outpost or something like that in Ruta-N where SAP is going to provide training and mentoring, startup incubation, which Ruta-N already provides, but now SAP is going to say, how can we help? And I'll tell you, there's a program that even we benefited from. And so I'll thank Amazon for this right now. So Amazon AWS on their cloud services side years ago gave us like a startup, I don't want to say scholarship, but like a credit. And it's like, we're going to give you all this stuff for a year, okay, to help you get your business up off the ground. So I don't even remember the details, but it's like you can use AWS Cloud for a year, and you can have so many credits for this service or that service or something like that. And it was extremely helpful for us. And I would say is a part of the reason why we've been loyal AWS customers since then. We obviously have things running on other different platforms, but we do have what tech people would call multiple workloads running, production workloads running right now on in Amazon's AWS infrastructure. But anyway, so SAP, which is, it's a software company. They have other stuff. They have consulting, they have cloud services and such, but their core business, what is their, I guess you'd say, their claim to fame, their biggest direct competitor is probably Oracle. And I know it used to be, maybe they'll say, no, well, today we have all these other things, which they do. But they have, for example, enterprise accounting software, ERP. So SAP, ERP software, which is enterprise resource planning. And you can think of that, if you're outside of the business world, as, imagine accounting software for a giant business, okay? That's what ERP is. So if everything from, let's suppose you've got a steel mill, then you've got to track your steel coming in and your orders and your international currency exchange and your transfer pricing and all this stuff, and your taxes in 30 different countries and all this stuff like that. So SAP can do that. Oracle can do that. Microsoft probably would tell you that Dynamics can do that. I don't know. I'm not, accounting software isn't my thing, but basically that's what SAP does. And so all businesses, once they get to beyond being a micro business, really need to have some kind of, if not accounting software, or that's at a minimum, but really enterprise resource planning software, which the proponents would tell you does a lot more than just accounting, because it's going to help you with everything from managing your supply chain. There's going to be customer relationship management things that you could connect to it, and it's going to interface with all these different things. So that's what SAP does. And so it's really an exciting initiative that they've announced, and hopefully, and it's really good. I'll tell you this, it's really good to see Ruta-N moving again. The new administration, the new mayoral administration, has only been in office since January, but you can go back and read articles in Finance Colombia. I remember when, under the past mayoral administration, the Ruta-N board resigned in protest. I have sources inside of Ruta-N who were, then at the time were telling me kind of that morale had gone to, it was really dark times, because they were using it as for political paybacks and things like that, instead of Ruta-N following its mission, which is to promote entrepreneurship in Medellin. And I would not be surprised if in these over 500 allegations of corruption, malfeasance, and mismanagement that the new administration has turned into, the Colombian authorities, the national authorities, like the Attorney General, like the Procuraduría, which is like the Inspector General's office, and things that we'll see some maybe misdeeds come to light that happened in that dark period, meaning the last 4 years at Ruta-N. But now it's like they haven't wasted time. I mean, here we are 3 months in, 4 months in, and they've already put together this partnership with one of the largest software companies in the world. Certainly, as far as I know, by far the largest software company in Europe. So that's good to see. Now, another reminder, in a couple of weeks, in May 2nd to 5th, the Feria de Dos Ruedas, the The motorcycle industry event's going to be in Medellin. Super cool, like I said before. And if you can attend that, if you're going to be in Colombia, it's worth flying to Medellin to attend this event. If you like motorcycles or just like good G-rated, PG-rated fun without, any shady stuff like these clowns doing cannabis tours or shooting up the lake out there in Guatapé. You want to do something that you can, be proud of and not be in the wrong element. Go to Feria de dos Ruedas. Go to the two-wheel motorcycle fair. It's going to be at Plaza Mayor in Medellin. The first day, the second is open to industry people, and you need to have pre-registered for that if you want to attend on the first day. But Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are open to the public, and anybody can go and buy a ticket. It's super cheap. It's like, I don't know, like probably $3 or something like that to get in. But again, they're not a sponsor or anything like that. I just think it's a cool event. It's a lot of fun. I go every year. And if you can, you certainly want to attend that if you're going to be in town. It's worth traveling to Medellin for, actually. So the details are there. Remember, practice critical thinking, stay mentally and physically active, and above all, be kind to yourself and others.